Hey there, welcome to Business Breakthroughs. I'm Neal Dipentino. I'm your host, and we are so excited to have you with us today. We got a great show for you. Look, at business is about facing challenges and overcoming them. And that's what we're going to be talking about. And I'm going to tell you, you're going to love the person that we have with us today. He is a regular contributor in Forbes magazine and an author of 4 books. The titles include Easier, his latest book, Leadership Language, The New Elevator Pitch. He's also appeared on ABC News, CNN, NBC TV. He's been in Entrepreneur Magazine, Success Magazine, the New York Post, and dozens of other outlets. He is a business coach, and some of his students have actually been on the Shark Tank, which is kind of cool. So I'm really excited to bring on Chris Westfall.
Doing
How you
great,
doing,
Neil. Thank you
Chris?
so much for that introduction. It is a pleasure to be here with you today.
Outstanding. Now you said you're down in Texas. You're from Texas in the
That's right.
Houston area,
Yes.
and kind of in an interesting location. Tell me about
Well,
the location
right
you're at right
now
now.
I'm in an incubator for entrepreneurs, which is a sort of a hub where entrepreneurs can come. And I'm here in Bryan, Texas, which is right on the edge of College Station, which is where Texas A&M University is located. So that's where I am, and I'm here because I'm doing some
Nice.
coaching with some clients here in town.
Well, fantastic. Texas A&M. That's awesome. We are at SEC. We're here in Tennessee, so we're Vols fans. So
Gotcha. Gotcha.
uh, but that's okay. We'll let that one
Sounds like a
slide. How's
plan.
that sound? So tell us a little bit about what you've got going on. We want to talk a little bit about the new book that you have, and then we want to talk a little bit about your coaching business and what you have going on
Well,
there.
thank you for that. Again, that introduction. And I think the best way for me to start is really to say that as a business coach, my business is about service and providing support to people who don't necessarily see life as easy, because life isn't easy. But
Hmm.
my latest book is called Easier, which is all about helping people to show up differently, even when times are tough, when relationships are difficult, when business is challenging. And in those places and in those spaces, I've been very fortunate to help my clients to see things in a new way, um, because I've had to see things in a new way. And I've had to come to the realization that easier always exists. And we don't always see that, but easier always exists. And even in the midst of difficulty, no matter how tough things get, there is an easier way. And our challenge as entrepreneurs, as executives, as leaders, as husbands, wives, partners, and friends is to find that easier way.
Hmm. Absolutely. I totally agree with you 100%. The one thing that you just said that is of interest to me, I mean, that stands out the most to me is the idea of service. And I've been in business for a really long time, longer than I even want to admit. We've been doing business breakthroughs now for a few weeks.
Mm.
It's a fairly new podcast, but with the people that we've interviewed so far, it seems to me that that word pops out more than any other word that we hear on this podcast. And why is that so
Well,
important?
I think that when we see things in an easier way, we show up differently. And that's not to minimize the difficulties and challenges of life at all. It's to point in a different direction, a direction that speaks of possibilities. And really, the coaching conversation is about expanding those possibilities so that you see things in a new way. And so many times when life gets difficult and business is challenging, it's because we see it through sort of a tunnel vision. You know what I'm talking about, Neil. You know, there's a tunnel
Hmm.
vision.
Yeah.
We see that there's only one way forward. There's only one way to win. And if you think about it, I mean, if an athlete came to a coach and said, and pick the sport, any sport you want, an athlete comes to a coach and says, "Coach, there's only one way to win." What's the coach going to say? Coach is going to say, "Sit down. Sit down. Your job is to find every way to win, every possible way to win, within the rules, within the boundaries, but play the game to win." And that has been such a mantra for me, to find every way to win. And I've shared that with my clients, and the results that my clients have been able to discover, particularly when it comes to asking for money from venture capitalists and investors. It's been very, very exciting to see because I've helped companies and business leaders to raise over $400 million in capital so far. And that, I mean, look, that's not all the
Mm.
money in the world, but the companies that I've worked for, I'm just very proud of what they've been able to do and to achieve with some of these principles that govern the way that we communicate, the way that we interact, the way that we relate to each other as human beings. And when we understand those relationships and those connections, it's extraordinary what we can create, not from a place of being pushy or salesy or fake or inauthentic or anything like that, but from a place of service. From a place of service, we discover that things can get easier. And particularly when it comes to working with investors and trying to grow your business and trying to access capital, understanding the principles of effective communication. For me, I think it's the most powerful thing that anyone can do in business to advance their career.
Right. I on your website, there are a couple things that really stood out to me. You stayed on your website, said, if you want to create transformation in your career, your relationship, your life, I'm going to add your business. Change it always starts
Mm,
with a
mm,
conversation. And then you go on to say it's important because in business, whoever tells the best story wins. I love that whole line, that whole thing, and it's so true. And the other thing that I really liked about the next line that was on your website was, "This includes the story of telling
yeah,
about yourself." And I think that comes back to what you were saying is that you need to be authentic, and again, that comes with the service part of it. I mean, if I come into you and I'm looking to, I want to make a sale, let's say for instance, and everything, and it's all about me and all about my product, and I don't even take the time to have a conversation with you and listen with these two things that
right.
God gave us, then how can we even have a conversation? How
So
can we move
true.
forward?
My parents always used to tell me, two ears, one mouth, listen twice as much as you talk, which
You're-
was actually terrible advice
That's
for someone
right.
who speaks for a living, Neil, quite frankly. But, uh, but in
I totally
retrospect,
get that.
no, they were right. And the ability to listen, to take things in, to see new perspectives is really key. And I think that something that anyone listening to us today can take away right away, if they're willing to, is uh, to consider that if we can give ourselves permission to see things in a new way, the situation may be the same, but we can find a way to show up differently. And sometimes that difference is just making a
Right.
different choice about the story that we're telling ourselves, back to what you were saying before, or deciding to drop the
Mhm.
story altogether. You know, I I had
Right.
a really interesting conversation with a guy. His name is Murray Wilcox, and this guy, he's a South African surfer from South Africa, and he's an extreme surfer. And which means he's looking for waves, Neil, that are like 15 feet high, 15 feet plus. And I'm from the Midwest. That's how I grew up. I didn't grow up surfing and that sort of thing. So his life was fascinating to me. But I said to this guy, Murray Wilcox, I said, Murray, when you're at the top of one of these, 20-foot waves, what what's going through your mind? I mean, have you got a plan? Are you going to go left, right, 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 left, or are you thinking about what your coach said to you last week, or are you thinking about, maybe the people on the beach that are watching you and how good you're going to look doing whatever it is you're going to do next? I mean, what's going through your head? And Murray Wilcox said to me something and I'll never forget it. When I asked him what he was thinking, he said nothing. I'm thinking of nothing. And it really hit me like a 15-foot wave, because I thought, you know what? When you're at the top of the wave, I mean, you might have plans, but really the best thing that you can plan on is to be in the moment and go where that wave is taking you. And from that place, from that realization, I came to understand that really when we are at our best is when our thoughts and our stories aren't clouding our perspectives, aren't clouding our minds. And it's really interesting. I don't know if you can see this, but I actually did a drawing for our conversation today, Neil. And this is the drawing that I did. It's a drawing of me. And you can you see the resemblance?
I really can.
This
Absolutely.
is from my blue period is actually when the but here's the thing, and I do have a point. This is me. But when I have a lot of things on my mind like this, when I have a lot of stories that I'm telling myself, and I have more and more and more stuff on my mind, it turns me into a moron. Because when I have more and more on my mind, I don't have time to focus on what's right in front of me. I don't have time to engage in this conversation. I don't have the ability to really listen. I don't have the ability to be flexible and really,
Right.
really share and really contribute in a meaningful way to this conversation. And that's not just true for me or stickman me. When we have more and more on our minds, we become morons. But when we are at our best is when we step outside of our stories, step outside of our preconceptions. It was Edison who said, there is a way to do it better. Find it. And if we want to find that
Hmm.
better way, it starts by understanding that we've all got some stuff going on in our heads. We've all got stories going on in our heads.
Right.
But if we can step outside of the story, and it's not a question of trying to control the story or anything like that. It's a question of where you put your attention and what it is that you choose to ignore. For example,
Right.
the voices behind me. I'm choosing to ignore them right now. I don't know why they're screaming, and I hope it's not coming through this microphone.
No, you're fine. Hey, nice job. I like how you staged that. That was perfect.
Exactly. Those are the extras. They're my backup singers back
Yeah.
there. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Fantastic.
Absolutely.
I
Well,
hope you
I
pay them
just I
well.
wanted to bring everything, Neil. I wanted to bring drawings, backup singers, some
Yeah.
screaming, the whole
Right.
9 yards.
This is going to be the best podcast ever. Are you kidding me? Oh, so I get what you're saying, okay? Because I'm kind of that's me. I probably have a tendency to over prepare for everything, no matter what it is. It could be a business deal. It could be like my wife comes home and I want to have something special for dinner. I want to go someplace. I want to do this, and so I will think it over and over and over in my mind 1,000 times. And then when she gets there, all I got to do is say, "You want to do this?" And you say, "Yep, nope." But in my mind, I've played it out so many times. So the thing is that how do you get all of this junk, I guess, for lack of a better word, out of your mind so you can get right to the
Well, it's
point and make it
counterintuitive, but
easier?
there's not some six-step strategy that you have to implement. You don't have to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and make your bed in order to get this right. You simply have to come into life with a little bit of understanding and understanding exactly what you're describing. And that is that it's never tougher than it is in our minds, period, full stop.
Hmm.
And even when we are imagining a worst case scenario and we find ourselves in a bad scenario, it's never worse than it is in our minds. Why? Because when we are in the middle of a situation, when we're at the top of the wave, we have the ability to move around. We have the ability, if we choose to remember it, to recall that we are adaptable, that we are flexible, and that when we have difficult circumstances, we also have choices, how we show up and what it is that we can do. What are the action steps that we can take? That's really where the coaching conversation comes
Hmm.
into play because everybody has those mental conversations going on. Everyone has that story because and it, I don't know that this is any deep insight, but the reason for that is because we're all thinking. We all have thinking around stuff,
Right.
and it's
Right.
only natural to want
Exactly.
to achieve things, to want to be effective, to want to move forward in our lives, in our relationships, and all those kinds of things. It's only natural, but it is also perfectly natural to understand that where you put your attention is where you find your results, and
Right.
that's
Right.
really the key.
And it's kind of, and also I think kind of maybe the opposite could apply too, because I can remember, maybe going into a sales pitch with a client and everything, and I have something
Yeah.
specific that I want to really talk to them about and everything. And, even though they're taking the conversation someplace else, I'm not listening. I have something in my head and I am ready to pitch this thing come hell or high water. And then I end up missing the opportunity because of me, because of the junk in my head, because I'm a moron, right? Is I would imagine that that happens a lot with not
It
hopefully it's not
no,
just
it's
me.
not. It happens all the time. I was working with a client, a financial services client. In fact, they're a credit company, and I had their entire senior leadership team, and their senior leaders. A guy raised his hand and he said, "Chris, when I go in and I give a presentation, Immediately, I'm 2 minutes into the presentation, and folks are asking me questions, and I don't know what to do. I ask them to wait till the end, but they won't wait. Right?
Yeah, good
Exactly.
luck
I
with
mean,
that,
it's like
right?
trying to tell the sharks what you want them to do. Mr. Wonderful's not listening. Um,
No,
um,
that's
but
right.
it's the same kind of thing. It- We we get interrupted. We get thrown off of our agendas. The agenda that we need to stick to, though, is remembering that we are adaptable and that we are flexible. And it is that flexibility that we all possess inside of any circumstance. I apologize. My apologies. I'm so sorry.
Well, he had something else on his mind, so you had to actually make that See, you are staging all of this. I
Well, I'm
really
going to give your
honestly believe
producer
this.
something to cut. Sorry about that. But it's so interesting. We get interrupted and we interrupt ourselves.
Mhm,
Why? Because we think
mhm,
that if we do not marry ourselves to an agenda and set up a plan and work the plan, that all will be lost. But here's the thing, Neil. Here's the thing that you and I
mhm,
and everyone listening to the sound of our voices knows: man plans, God laughs. We have the
mhm,
ability to make plans, and planning is useful. But what's really useful is to remember that we are adaptable. And that's not just some motivational mumbo jumbo. That is built into our DNA. We as human beings are built to
mhm,
adapt. And the reason that I say that it's built into our DNA, I actually did some research into this. And I put it in my book that scientists, when they discovered the human genome, the way that our DNA is structured, they thought that it was going to be much more sophisticated. That they thought that there was going to be much more detail in the human genome. But there's not. You know why? Because our genome is built to adapt. We have nature and nurture. Unlike lizards and donkeys and giraffes that have instinct and they are locked in and they do what it is that they are going to do, we as human beings have the ability to
mhm,
grow and to adapt and to be something more than we were yesterday. That's not motivational. It's science. It's part of our DNA and the way that we are
mhm.
built. And when we marry ourselves to a plan and we create stories about how disaster is imminent if the plan does not come to fruition, things get more difficult, not easier. And if people are listening to this and they're
Right.
going, "Man, that's me. I'm planning things. I'm a planner too. I plan, but I hold on loosely to my plans." And I think there are some things that can help us, any of us, when we are facing a difficult situation. The first thing that I share with my clients is to zoom out, to step back. When things are showing up that are unexpected, how can you step back? Like a painter who's painting a picture. That painter has to step back to see what it is that he or she is creating. And can we take a moment to step back to see what's really going on? If there is an interruption, is it the end of the world, or is it something that you need to address and then return to the conversation? If you find yourself not listening, isn't that something that can be fixed with a thought? I mean, we don't need a you don't need to watch 8 videos in order to understand that it's one thought away. And so many times it's
Mhm,
that thought that's waiting for us. It's right there that can bring us back to the conversation, back to the engagement, back to the results that we're looking for. And it's waiting for us. It's one thought away. And seeing that as a possibility isn't, again, it's not a matter of motivation. It's just a matter of understanding that possibility always exists. I mean, Neil, right now in this conversation, how many possibilities exists? It's infinite. I mean, we could talk about avocados. We could talk about anything. Am I right? And if
that's
that's
right,
true for
yeah.
you and me right now, I mean, are we superheroes? Do we have powers that others don't possess? No, it's because we have the ability to access possibility. And that's really what makes things easier, quite frankly.
I love it. Absolutely, 100%. So the things that you're saying, I mean, you got me
I didn't
sold
know what I'm
now.
selling.
I'm gonna tell you, I really do. I I don't know what you're selling, but I smell what you're cooking and I love it. Um, I look at life as being I love the idea of life being easier. And, as I get older, I look back and I realize that, some of the things I did in business and in my personal life, with my family, the whole nine yards, it's like I could have made things so much easier for myself, so much easier for them, but I was really kinda stuck in my ways. I didn't take that step back. I didn't, take a look at the possibilities because I was like, it was
Mm,
my way or the highway. It was
mm.
kind of the way I looked at things, okay? And I would imagine in your coaching, you run across people like that. You're just like, "Man alive, this guy just I'm not breaking through to him. How can I help him so that he understands this concept that I'm trying to
Well,
get across?"
the thing that I share with the the folks that you are describing, which by the way is me too, that's how I am too, is to remind them of exactly what you just said, Neil, and that is that this is how I once was, but it's not a pathology. It's not a prison sentence. You can't uh, not escape from how you once were. And reminding people that they have capabilities, reminding people that change not only exists, but that is something that we can all embrace if we choose to, is to me very empowering. I had a client that came to me and he said, Chris, I have a problem every time I am in a meeting and somebody asks me a question, a difficult question. They put me on the spot and I freeze up. Every time somebody puts me on the spot with a question, I don't know what to do. So, you know what I did? Ask him a question. I put him on the spot. I said, hey, look,
Mhm.
I said, man, have you ever had a moment where something came up so quickly that that you had to react? You didn't have a choice. Is there any time in your life where and without hesitation, he goes, yeah, I'll never forget the time I was snowboarding in Colorado. And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, I was snowboarding in Colorado. And
Yeah.
these two kids come out on the run and they're like, I don't know, 10 or 11 years old and they're playing and they're right in front of me. And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, that's what I said. I was freaking out. And I hit this mogul and I'm like, I'm going to smash into these kids. So he leans into the mogul, shifts his weight, and does some snowboard fantastic moves, catches this kid midair, wraps him up like a
Yeah.
burrito, and they land in the snow. And he saves the kid. He basically saved the kid's life and avoided. And I'm like, I, I hear this story. It's extraordinary. I'm like, are you like Captain America on the ski slopes? Or are you the schlub in the office that can't respond when the boss asks a question? The answer is he's both.
Right.
And what we came to discover was that he realized that the way he was showing up in the office, and by the way, he was like 4 6 weeks in the job, 4 to 6 weeks. I mean, he was new. Can you imagine? Of course people are going to ask you questions. You're going to be nervous. Do I really have the response that they're looking for? It's only natural to be that way. So when what he was describing as a problem, I saw as being perfectly natural, which wasn't an excuse,
Mhm.
but it was a description that made things easier. Because anyone in his position, anyone would feel nervous, unsure, and maybe a little hesitant to share. Boom, easier.
Right.
And also, it's not a pathology. A pathology means a pattern of behavior that you can't break free from. Because when the moment called for it, he was absolutely able to, and fortunately that he was, because he probably saved that kid's life or certainly saved that kid from a lot of injury if he'd have smashed into him on the slopes. So
Right.
sometimes giving yourself a little grace and a little space and a little reminder of what you're capable of can be very helpful, because I tell you what, if a client sits down with me and says that's just the way I am, there's one thing that I know, and that is that that's a misunderstanding, because the way
Mhm.
that I am and the way that you are and the way that we are as human beings, it's the way that we're wired. It's like opposable thumbs. We all have them. We have the ability to adapt. We have the ability to show up differently. If we didn't, coaching would never work. Therapy would never work. No one would ever get released from prison. People who've been divorced would never remarry. It just wouldn't work out. And yet we see the triumph of hope over experience every day. Why is that? Because
I love
because
it.
we have capabilities and capacities that we lose sight of. Why? Because we get lost in our thinking. We get lost in thought, and we
Right.
forget ourselves. And sometimes and in fact, when my coach, I was working with my coach, she would remind me who I am, not in a way where she was not trying to be flattering. She's trying to be useful. She was trying to be of service, and from a place of reminding us who we are, we remember the possibilities that we often forget. We remember the resourcefulness that evades us, and we remember that that's just the way that I am. It is a misunderstanding, and it's true for companies too, because the most dangerous words in business
Hmm.
are "that's the way we've always done things."
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wonderful. I mean, this has been a wonderful interview. I really appreciate everything you said, and I'm going to take it to heart. In fact, I'm going to go out and buy your book tonight when I get
You
on.
sure
Can I
can,
get it
yeah.
on
I mean, the
Amazon?
the
By the
books. I
way.
mean, like, I happen to have them here. You got Leadership Language, which is the book about communication skills that can really make a difference when it
Hmm.
comes to communicating in the workplace, but also in your relationships. It's all about sharing your story and sharing, as you said, Neil, that conversation that matters. Leadership Language shows you how to do it, and then Easier, the one that I just wrote, is a conversation, and this is 60 ways to make your work life work for you inside of a conversation, a coaching conversation, a conversation between a client and a coach that reveals in the course of their dialogue together uh, how these two men overcome some very, very difficult circumstances and they discover a way to make things easier. That's what the books are about.
Fantastic. Well, listen, that's all the time we have for today. I hate that because I've really enjoyed this conversation. In fact, the one thing I do have to so this is the last thing I have to ask you about, and it has nothing to do with anything that we've talked about so far today. But I when I was introducing you, I left one thing out. You are the U.S. National Elevator Pitch Champion. I had no idea that there
A
was
lot of
even a competition, and I think that is
Well,
absolutely
thank
the
you, my
coolest thing
friend.
ever.
Yes, a lot of people don't. And when I received that recognition, it helped to launch my career of working with entrepreneurs and helping people to land on television shows like Shark Tank Australia, and Dragon's Den in Canada. So, done a lot of work helping people to
Wow.
pitch their business ideas since that recognition. Yes, sir.
Very cool. Awesome. That is fantastic. So, if our guests want to get in contact with you,
The
Chris,
easiest way
how,
is
how would
via
they
my
do that?
website, and that's westfallonline.com. And if people are interested to learn more or they're curious about anything that I've said here, there's a contact button on my website, and you can just hit that and you can see my calendar. You can send me an email. You can even set up a time to talk if you'd like to. So that's the easiest way to find out about me. You can also find my writing on Forbes.com, and my YouTube channel is youtube.com/Westfall Online.
Man, that is a lot to remember, but we will have it on our show. You'll be able to find that. So that's wonderful. Again, Chris, thank you so much for being with us today. I do appreciate your time and all the energy you brought to the show. This has been one of the best shows that we've had so far. We'd
Thanks,
love to
Neil.
have you
Sounds
back
great. And thank
sometime
you
in
so
the
much for a
future.
terrific interview. Great to see you.
All right. No, thank you very much. That's our show for today. Thanks for being with us. This is the Business Breakthroughs, and it's produced by our good friend Ryan Shear. I want to thank Wendy and our sponsor, Titan Digital. Until next time, adios.